It's our purpose to bring to bear the principle of common sense and rational discussion to the issues of our day. America was created at a time of great turmoil, tremendous disagreements, anger, hatred. There was a book written in 1776 that guided much of the discipline of thinking that brought us to the discovery of our freedoms, of our God-given freedoms. It was Thomas Paine's Common Sense, written in 1776, one of the first American bestsellers, in which Thomas Paine explained by rational principles the reason why these small colonies felt the necessity to separate from the powerful Kingdom of England and the King of England. He explained their inherent desire for liberty, freedom, freedom of religion, freedom of speech, and he explained it in ways that were understandable to the people, to all of the people. A great deal of the reason for America's constant ability to self-improve is because we are able to reason, we're able to talk to each other, we're able to listen to each other, and we're able to analyze. We are able to apply our God-given common sense. So let's do it. Hello, this is Rudy Giuliani, and I'm back again with Rudy Giuliani's Common Sense, and today we have a very special guest, and someone very timely, Larry Elder. Let me just tell you in introduction that Larry has the hit #1 documentary out there. It's really going viral. It's called Uncle Tom, which you can see is a very provocative title, because if you know Larry, you know it's just the opposite. But he takes on things that I don't think a lot of men would have the courage to take on. Because when you're called the thing that's the ethnic slur, the ethnic horrible thing they can call you that makes you feel like you're a turncoat Italian. I was called that when I went after the mafia, or you're a self-hating Jew, or all these things exist to kind of drive you back to do what they want you to do, which is probably all wrong, and that's the reason we're having such troubles today. But they drive you back there, and people just submit. Not Larry. Larry didn't submit all his life. That's why he's as successful as he is. He's one of the major talk show hosts in the country. He's a desired guest on just about every kind of show imaginable. He's an author, and now he's a filmmaker. This is a man who's, knows who he is, has had great success, and his value to this country at this moment is remarkable. It's always been. So I'm honored to be with Larry Elder. Larry, first of all, tell us how the documentary is doing.
Mayor, first of all, thank you so much for having me, and thank you for the kind words.
Yeah, well deserved.
Well, the documentary is doing phenomenally well. Just in terms of revenues, its opening weekend doubled the opening weekend of Bowling for Columbine. That's Michael Moore's documentary, which went on to become the 5th highest grossing documentary of all time. And of course, his had major media buildup. Mine had virtually no media buildup. We did it all on social media, a little bit of radio advertising on conservative radio.
Right, sure.
That's it. It is, if you go on to IMDb, the International Movie Database, now over 2,000 people have given a review on a scale from 1 to 10, and it's gotten about a 9.4, which is phenomenal.
Yeah, I met many of the reviews, and I have to tell you, Larry, I read them with some trepidation because I know where they are, the people reviewing you. Wow.
Yeah.
They rose above it.
And Mayor, what it's about is the way people like myself, Candace Owens, Herman Cain, who's in the film, Colonel Alan West, who's in the film, Pastor Stephen Broden, who's in the film, Carol Swain, and others well-known and unwell-known, are treated just because we have a different point of view from the Democratic Party. Just because, for example, we believe that porous borders hurt inner-city workers because illegal aliens, particularly those who are unskilled, compete for jobs that would otherwise be held by unskilled black and brown workers, and puts downward pressure on their wages. And so therefore, we think we ought to have a conversation about whether or not we want to be in the party of porous borders. We feel that parents living near underperforming bad government schools should have an option out. I went to Crenshaw High School. I think I told you that before, Mayor, the school that was the locus of Boys in the Hood, that movie some years ago.
Yes, I remember. Yes.
Right now, 3% of kids at my former high school can do math at grade level, and the school is a Crip school, meaning the Crips run the school. I know that because Ice-T, 10 years after I went there, went to my school and told me, Mayor, he chose it because he wanted to go to a Crip school. Now, you're a mom or a dad living within a geographical area of that school. You are mandated to go to that school because the Democratic Party is in bed with the teachers union. Teachers union hates choice. Now, why should I be in that party? So the conservatives in this movie have raised questions about this. And rather than it sparking a healthy debate within the Black community, people like that are shunned, called Uncle Toms, sellouts, and therefore are not even part of the discussion.
Right. But tell me a little bit more about the complexity of the Black community, which I think as mayor of New York, I realized right from the very beginning and living in New York. When you think of the mass media, the Black community is all the noisy voices they hear on television, the majority of which are extremely liberal, extremely left-wing, now almost moving towards socialism. And then there are some people like Larry, a good, solid group of people like that. But then they're passed off as, Fox people, right-wing people, turncoats. So that isn't the Black. The Black community is vast. When I first became mayor, I assigned many more police officers to Harlem. I got tremendous grief in the white community. Why are you taking police officers out of the white community to put it in a place where people didn't vote for you? I said, because my job is to save lives.
Right.
And they're getting killed 7 times more than you are. You're losing jewelry. I can go find it. They lose their life. I can't find them again. So I moved them up there. So the white people were angry at me for taking them out. I go up to Harlem and immediately Charlie Rangel, all the Black politicians start yelling at me, racist, occupation army. So I hold a big, gigantic, raucous town hall meeting, and the Black politicians got booed by the women in the audience, who said, "We've been asking for more police for 20 years, and he's the first mayor to put more police here. We need more police here because, yeah, some of them get rough with our kids, but the way our kids get killed are by other Black people like you." Wow. It was like an awakening for me. And then I went to look at the statistics. And I had prosecuted before this 70 police officers for corruption and brutality. So I wasn't like totally on that side. I mean, I saw what was wrong with the police. Changed my mind completely. So this is a much more complicated community. The disservice that's being done to them is they're being painted as a monolithic community that has only one view. And it's because they're required to have one view. It's almost like a dictatorship. And when people like you break out of it, that's where we have the hope. Mm-hmm. It's eventually going to happen. They're all going to break out of it because they're all going to see how counterproductive this has been. What would you think are the major things? Just focus on the African American community. What are the major things that have to be done for the African American community to bring about broad success? There's been great success at the top, some in the middle, and it's an inner city problem. That's the problem. How do you move the whole thing?
Well, the far and away, the number one reason for the problems that we have, far and away, it's not racism, institutional racism, systemic racism, structural racism, and the one that Beto O'Rourke gave us, foundational racism. It is the absence of fathers in the home. In 1965, 25% of Black kids were born outside of wedlock. That number now is 70%. And forget about elder. Barack Obama once said a kid raised without a father is 5 times more likely to be poor and commit crime, 9 times more likely to drop out of school, 20 times more likely to end up in jail. Now, the question we ought to be having is the welfare state incentivizing women to marry the government? And is it incentivizing men to abandon their financial and moral responsibility? And I argue that it is. We're not even having that debate, not even among Republicans. And I think they fear saying what I just now said because they will be perceived as blaming the victim, or they'll be called racist, and they'll be called somebody blaming the victim. So therefore, the discussion isn't even had. But that's the number one problem. You pointed out the crime rate. Because of this lack of fathers in the home and the higher crime rate, young Black men are anywhere from 8 to 10 times more likely to be a victim of homicide compared to a young white man. The number one cause of avoidable death for young white men is accidents, like car accidents. The number one cause of death, avoidable or not, for young Black men is homicide almost always at the hands of another black man? Now, that's the question. We can have a vaccine that would eliminate white racism. And would 70% of black kids still be born outside of wedlock? Would 50% of inner city black kids still be dropping out of high school? And will 25% of young black urban men still have criminal records? If the answer to those questions are yes, yes, and yes, then getting rid of racism is not the solution. And we'll be forever looking for the solution if we focus on nonsense, which is what this is.
The Trump campaign has a special offer just for you. President Trump really wants to give you a signed 2020 Make America Great Again hat. He wants to make sure the lucky winner is one of his top supporters. Be sure to enter soon, because this is an opportunity you don't want to miss. This offer is only going to a select group of supporters, and you are one of them. All you have to do is text Rudy to 88022. And unlike Joe Biden, you'll remember that. Today, for your chance to win a signed 2020 Make America Great Again hat and own a piece of history. Again, that's Rudy, R-U-D-Y, to 88022 to enter to win this contest and join President Trump in the fight to keep America great for 4 more years. This was paid for by Donald J. Trump for President, Inc. Now, why does the compelling?
Well, Democrats have no interest in saying anything that I just now said, because they want black people to be focusing on racism and racism and racism, because they somehow have managed to characterize themselves as the good guys, Republicans as the bad guys. So they have no interest in talking about what the real problems are. They really want to have black people angry at this time of the year, so they march in there like lemmings and pull that lever 95% for the Democratic Party. The media has no interest in this, because the media, I believe a lot of these young people who are in the media and are in our streets are sincerely convinced that racism does indeed remain a major problem in America. They see something that happened to George Floyd and they go, oh my God. You heard Obama say George Floyd put his knee on the necks of black Americans, plural. So you have somebody like Obama pushing this nonsense, even though he knows it's not true, for political purposes. So there's a lot of reasons why a lot of people pull this stuff. You have a whole body of people in academia. I mentioned this guy, Mark Lamont Hill. He is the head of the African American Studies Department or something like that at Temple. You have a whole cadre of institutions that push this narrative that racism remains a major problem in America, even though Obama's election and re-election, I would have thought, put a fork in that notion. I mean, think about it. Obama got a higher percentage of the white vote than John Kerry did. And back in the 60s, when white Americans were asked if you'd vote for a black person for president, only 37% of them said so. And fast forward, what does Obama say when he becomes president? Racism is, quote, part of America's DNA, end of quote. He knows it's BS, because he's got to say it for politics. But do you think he's telling Sasha and Malia that nonsense? Of course not. And that's why I have a real problem with Obama.
Very interesting. Very. That's a very good point. I bet that's right.
Because a lot of people thought when they hired Obama, they got the guy who was on 60 Minutes with Steve Kroft when he was a senator. He hadn't yet become the front runner, but he was catching Hillary. That's why they put him on. And Steve Kroft said to him, Senator Obama, if you don't get this nomination, become president, will it be because of race? And I stood back and I said, let me see how this man answers, because that'll tell me everything I need to know about what kind of person he is. And he said, no. If I don't get the nomination, it will be because I have not formed a vision that the American people can embrace, end of quote. And I said, hallelujah. At least this guy is not what I call a victocrat, a black guy who blames everything else on the white man. Fast forward, the Cambridge police acted stupidly. If I had a son, he'd look like Trayvon. We have a place in Ferguson where we have our own problems. He hires Eric Holder, who says that when it comes to race, America has been a nation of cowards. He invites.
He didn't believe that either, Larry.
70 times to the White House.
He didn't believe that.
Of course not. He made.
I know Eric since he's a young lawyer. I helped to train him at one point in his life. Had a very good relationship with him. He's a very smart guy whose views are probably just a little bit different than yours and mine, a little bit more left wing. But he sees the basic. He would agree with you, I'm sure, on your analysis of the black family.
I don't know him well enough to respond to that. I know this. He gave a speech, Mayor, where
terrible.
After Donald Sterling came out and lost his team, Eric Holder said something to this effect. when there's dramatic racism in America, we can deal with that. We can deal with people like Donald Sterling. They're not the problem. The problem is pernicious racism. And he gave 3 examples, each of which were bogus. Number 1, he said that black criminal defendants get a longer sentence compared to white criminal defendants for committing the same crime. That is true. But he didn't tell you that the U.S. Sentencing Commission says the reason for the discrepancy is for, quote, legitimate variables, close quote. Most notably, the typical black criminal has a longer criminal record than the typical white criminal. And when it comes to sentencing, judges take your convictions into consideration. That's why the difference. Number 2, he said, because of the movement for voter ID. Well, majority of blacks want voter ID, for crying out loud. And the Supreme Court ruled 6-3, and in a decision by Justice John Paul Stevens, then the most liberal justice, said that voter ID is a perfectly legitimate thing for a state to do. And the third thing he argued was pernicious racism is the fact that black boys get kicked out disproportionately in schools compared to white boys. That's also true. It's also true whether the principal is black or white, whether the school board is black or white. It doesn't matter. Black boys have been misbehaving compared to white boys. I'm sorry. I think it comes back to the absence of fathers in the home. But my point is, Mayor, Eric Holder, suit, tie, steptoe and Johnson, well-educated. People listen to this kind of stuff. They don't listen to Sharpton. They don't listen to Jesse Jackson, but they listen to Holder. They listen to Obama, and they say the same thing in well-structured sentences, well-crafted paragraphs, but they're pushing the same kind of victimhood BS that is hurting this country. And I have a real problem with Obama for doing that. And race relations fell in his second term, I think, as Americans realized the guy they hired. The guy they hired was the guy they thought was on 60 Minutes with Steve Croft. The guy they ended up with was a guy who invited Sharpton to the White House 70 times.
Yeah, that's a very, very strong point. And the tragedy of it is, if you know any one of these 2 men, you know they don't believe it. And they're doing a disservice to not only to their own people, but to America by not moving this along. Obama could have taken us light years ahead if he had been a different kind of person. But now we're facing the sort of Biden-Trump choice for the African American people. And I was with Donald Trump and helped to develop the breakthrough that he did, because I did it myself when I ran for mayor of New York. A very similar approach. I went to the African American community where 75% of the murders were taking place, 75% of the homicides and all other crimes. And I said, you've had years and years of Democratic rule. This city is a Democratic dominated city. What they've given you is more crime than any place in America, 1.1 million people on welfare, with the prospect of going up to 1.5. They've given you unemployment of 10.5%, and blacks disproportionately worse. Why don't you take a chance on me? Give me a chance. I promise you I can't do worse. I can give you one promise. At the end of my term, the numbers will be better. I hope they'll be magnificently better. But I will work every day, every night. And even though I don't think you're going to vote for me in any large numbers, I want to do it because I'm interested in the transformation of America long term. Well, I did it. I ran against the first African American candidate for mayor of New York. I lost. Maybe I got 5% of the black vote. Second time I ran against him for re-election, same problem, but I got 10% of the black vote, which people don't realize was a big difference. When I ran for the third term, after doing what I said I would do, I got 22% of the black vote in a city that had never given a Republican more than 15%. So it can be done, and I think Trump has the case to make because he did exactly the same thing, and on a much bigger scale, he produced. He said, give me a chance, and now we have a chance to look at the records. Highest employment, lowest unemployment, highest wages, took care of the prison problem, the mass incarceration problem, in exactly the right way, is dealing with black colleges in a much more effective way. I think is dealing with the black community in a way that doesn't create all those divisions we had under Obama. So this is a case he should go and make aggressively to the African American people. I don't agree with my fellow Republicans who say, oh, every time a Republican does that, it doesn't really help. I've actually seen it help. I saw it help me. I saw it help George Bush when he ran for re-election in Texas. And you can take those numbers up, and all you got to take them up is like from 5 to 15, and shoot, the election's over, and it begins a move then in that direction.
You know, I made the case about Republicans not willing to go into the to the community and do the kinds of retail politicking that they should do in my movie, Uncle Tom. Out here in LA, we had a mayor, a Democrat mayor named Hahn. Hahn got elected, he got black support. He fired the popular black police chief, or didn't give them another term, and hired Bratton because the crime in the black community had gone up under Parks. And so Hahn didn't give Parks another 4 years and hired Bratton. Crime went down. What happened? Maxine Waters turned on Mayor Hahn, whom she supported the first time, and accused him of selling out the black community by getting rid of this police chief, and he became a one-term mayor. Now, I believe that largely that was because, unlike you, he didn't go out there, didn't have the personality, didn't have the charisma, didn't have the cashews to go to the black community and say, look here's what I've done, here's what's been going on, wake up. He didn't do that, you did, and Trump can do that. So it's all about whether or not the Republican has the ability, the desire, the will, the talent to go out there and make the case.
So now he'll be running against a specific candidate. We're down to Joe Biden. And Joe Biden's history on race perplexes me completely because he's made statements, any two of which would have completely disqualified a Republican candidate. If it had been made, the last two that we can recall, the one about if you don't vote for me, you're not black, or the one about how blacks are not as diverse by any means as the Hispanics. I mean, those are truly insulting and arrogant, extremely arrogant remarks. Like, he can define the black community. I mean, if you made that, they would be angry at you for defining the black community. No one man can do that, but certainly not a man of another race. It's ridiculous.
But Mayor, before
Why don't they go crazy?
Agreed. Mayor, before that, this is a guy who said that the NAACP has endorsed me in every single race I've been in. The NAACP has endorsed him in 0 races because they're a 501c3 and can't endorse. He also said that he got arrested trying to visit Nelson Mandela. And when Nelson Mandela got out of prison, he came to the White House and said, Mr. Vice President, thank you so much for trying to see me. 0 evidence whatsoever that he did it. Andy Young, who supposedly was with him when he got arrested, said, I was never arrested. And by the way, Biden said he got arrested on the streets of Soweto trying to visit Nelson Mandela. He was 900 miles away in Robben Island. The other thing is he's lied, Biden has, for decades about his civil rights record. When I was 17, 18 years old, I would go to black churches and I would organize how to desegregate restaurants and movie theaters in Wilmington, Delaware. New York Times looked at it, 0 evidence, and said his aides had, quote, gently reminded him to stop saying it, but Biden kept saying it anyway, end of quote. I mean, that alone, what does it say to you when you lie to me and lie to me and lie to me about things you think are going to make me vote for you that are completely not true?
He thinks you're a fool and he can take advantage of you. That's what it means. It also, in his case, Larry, I know him for a long time. And when I was first introduced to him, he was just elected to the Senate. I was introduced to him by a law school classmate of his who introduced him as follows. He was the dumbest guy in our law school class. He hardly got through. He got caught plagiarizing and he charmed the dean to overlook it. Boy, I'm going to tell you, you're going to laugh. He's so dumb. He says stupid things, but he's a nice guy. He's a really nice guy. And for me, that has captured my view of him, dummy, 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 dummy. I didn't start to realize as we moved along what a panderer he is and how he like his running mate is a chameleon. He'll take this position and that. He'll be very tough on crime in the 1994 bill. And now it's as if he never passed a bill. This is a very, very strange guy. But on the black issue, I think he said some things that would, any 3 of which would have disqualified you completely. He was a big opponent of busing. Okay, busing was controversial. But then he makes the comment that he doesn't want his kids to be in the jungle.
Right.
In the jungle. I mean, we know what that means. Unless it's Joe Biden. Gosh.
And the comment about Obama being first clean, articulate, nice, young black man, that's a storybook man. You don't know any black guys that can string 2 sentences together who can speak without double negatives. I mean, honestly. So he said a
Well,
lot of things.
that one comes a little bit from his stupidity, because he couldn't think of two people other than Sharpton and Jackson. He couldn't think of anybody else. It was Sharpton and Jackson. That's the whole black community for him.
Well, for him, the black community are the black people that he speaks to on Amtrak. He's often talked about that. That's his relationship. And they all kiss his butt. And so therefore they assume that the black community loves Joe Biden. But that's why he felt pressure to put on Kamala Harris. I mean, he was 2 gasps away from nominating as his running mate Maxine Waters.
Well, when Kamala Harris took him apart, you remember that's the time he said, I don't have any more time. It was like a boxing match where you tell the corner to throw the white towel in. I mean, she was pummeling him, but it was all true. He had no answer to any of the things that she said. And I find it interesting about her. She demanded an apology from him. She's never received it. Since then, he's done 2 more things that add. He hasn't done anything to dissipate it. He's done 2 more things to add to that. He's done the comment about, if you don't vote for me, you're not black, and he's done the other comment. So his racism, if he thought she was racist then, is worse now. So what is she going to say about that?
Well, and Mayor, what about Tara Reid? At one time, she said she believed Tara Reid's allegation against Joe Biden, which meant that she felt Joe Biden was guilty of sexual assault, and now she's his running mate. That's
racist. She's running with a racist that she hasn't yet explained she doesn't believe is a racist. Plus, he's done 2 more things that could suggest he's a racist since she came to that conclusion. And she said she believed the woman about the charges against him. Well, was she lying then? Did she just say that then because she was his opponent? When she says she doesn't believe it now, what happened? Did the angel Gabriel come to you and tell you it didn't happen? I mean, it's a very, very strange. It's a very strange choice and a very strange ticket. But how does Trump get his? I have all. It seems to me we have all this garbage going on, and in the middle of all of its garbage is fixing the crime bill of 1994. Magnificent thing to do. I was involved in writing that bill, and I was opposed to the marijuana sentences. And I'm going to tell you why. Kamala Harris prosecuted 1,500 marijuana smokers. These are little people. She put them in jail for big periods of time. I was a prosecutor for 17 years, Larry. I was in charge of the narcotics division in the U.S. Attorney's Office in the Southern District of New York when it was dominated by the mafia and dominated by the Colombian drug cartel owners. I mean, these were big drug dealers, and the Frank Jameses and the people like that who were the major multi-billion-dollar drug dealers in Harlem. I mean, these were tough, strong people. We didn't have time for marijuana. I mean, we had cocaine, we had all kinds of different strains of heroin coming at us from South America, from Asia. We're not going to go after some pisher who's smoking marijuana. I get my conviction rate up with that. One of them takes me a year to convict one person. I can get 100 of them a day. So I know prosecuting. What this woman is a complete fraud. What she did is she went after the little people. She went after the truant parents. And she let every major drug dealer that I can count go free. She let every friend of Willie Brown go free. She let, because her conviction rate was so bad, she pled out cases, murder cases, rape cases, to minor little crimes. She let a guy out named Vaunard Dussard. He was a black Muslim, big history of alleged murders. Within a few weeks of his being let out, he murdered 2 people, including a San Francisco journalist. Became a big scandal for her, and they wouldn't let her off as prosecutor. She was prosecuted in the Alameda County District Attorney's Office, where the statement is, that's a good district attorney's office. Her murder rate went way up. She was a complete joke as a prosecutor. When she talks about a prosecutorial record, she's a bully. She prosecutes the little people, she avoids the big people, and anybody politically connected never did a thing about pedophilia in the Catholic Church. Her predecessor had lined up numerous cases. They demonstrated against her 100 of them, peacefully, and she had them arrested. Same thing when people demonstrated against her for not doing enough about the police shootings. Look, there were hundreds of them. 99% of them were fine, but 1% of them wasn't. And you got to look at that. She stayed away. She didn't want that controversy because she wanted to put on this I'm a moderate thing. Meanwhile, she's letting criminals go free like crazy. And the crime rate in San Francisco is going up like that. And San Francisco, under her, became a very, very violent city. And it's remained that way for quite some time now.
And let's not forget, she goes on radio and then jokes about smoking marijuana with the host and says, yeah, and I inhaled. Ha, ha, ha. So she's prosecuting people on the one hand and then cracking jokes about her having smoked marijuana herself, considering it to be a harmless kind of thing on the other hand. You know, Mayor, I was a certified law clerk for the LA County, I think my second summer out of law school. And I was interviewed and I was asked, did I ever use any drugs? I said no. And I was asked, would you prosecute a one joint case? It is illegal for somebody to have a joint. Larry, if we hire you as a prosecutor, would you prosecute a one joint case? And I said, no, I wouldn't. And they said, even though that's the law. I said, even though that's the law. It's a stupid use of resources, even though I don't smoke marijuana, even though I don't believe in it. This is, again, I'm second year in law school. And I thought I'd lost the job. And they told me I was the only one who answered the question that way. And they hired me.
You'd have been the one I would have hired. I would have hired you. And you know, it's almost like understanding prohibition. There are certain things the law can prohibit, but there has to be basic buy-in in the community for it. And that's so small. And the one joint doesn't lead to the whole big terrible things. It's the 10 joints. Now, different story. If I go in and I find a guy with lots of marijuana and he's either selling it or maybe he's much worse than that. Now, a guy like that, I might put in rehabilitation. If I thought he was a user, if I thought he was a seller, then I would prosecute him. She was not doing those distinctions. I know that because I know the complaints about her at the time. Everybody hated her. I mean, she was a very, very disliked prosecutor. She's very disliked AG. And she has the reputation of not being a nice person. But she's definitely in it for herself. She's in it for, it's a typical prosecutor. It's like a bully. I go after the little ones. I get the easy pickings. It gets tough. I get away. I don't need controversy. I mean, she's about as anti-Catholic as you can get. But she wouldn't pursue the Catholic Church thing because who knows, could create a problem for her future. We don't need that around a president who's also a panderer, who can't seem to stick with a position for more than a couple of days. I mean, we need a strong person. We don't have it. So let's talk about Trump's accomplishments. In the meantime, while all of this is going on, and every day he's being called a racist, I can't figure out why. I don't know what he ever did that made him a racist. I mean, I know him for 30 years. And I know even the raps on him when he was here in New York. You know, no one ever thought of him as a racist. 3/4 of the time, well, not that, I'm exaggerating, 1/4 of the time, you'd see him with a bunch of black guys. You'd see him at the fights with a bunch of black guys. We'd go to Yankee Stadium, and he would have Tyson with him. Oh, I would sit right in the front at Yankee Stadium. He liked to sit up in the box with his friend George Steinbrenner. But he'd always come down to see me. And he would introduce me to the people he had with him. 1/3 of the times, it was black people. And he wasn't doing it for show. He wasn't a politician. They enjoyed sports together. He said, "Hey, don't you think the champ is the best? Man, he's really the best. How do you think he would have done it against Ali?" I said, "I think Ali's a little too tall for him." But that's the kind of guy he was. I mean, so why? Let's go over what he's done from your perspective, because you'll know it, better than anybody.
Well, just start out with the economy. If you look at the polling data after Obama got elected, the number one reason that white people gave for voting for Obama was the economy. The number one reason black people gave for voting for Obama was the economy. So it's the economy stupid. It still is the economy stupid. You mentioned Charlie Rangel a little while ago. Even Rangel said in analyzing Trump's victory that he won not because of white lash, which is what Van Jones said. He won because of economic anxiety. And as you know, the Obama administration gave us the worst economic recovery since 1949. He's the only president to preside over a recovery where at least 1 year didn't hit 3% GDP growth. His recovery was around 2% GDP growth. The difference between 2% and 3% is about 1 million jobs times the length of the recovery. So if Obama had done nothing, hadn't done anything at all to the economy, it probably would have grown 3% by his own team's projections. There would have been 7 million more jobs. Instead, he raised taxes, did Obamacare, put a bunch of regulations on the economy, and strangled the growth. What did Trump do? Trump presided over the best numbers ever for unemployment and for employment for blacks ever. He pointed out the First Step Act that he signed. So far, last I checked, 5,000 mostly black men have had their sentences reconsidered. 2,000 of them have been released, and those who've had them reconsidered have had their sentences reduced an average of 70 months. He also has funded historically black colleges to the tune of more than anybody else so far. He spent more money on so-called enterprise zones. He supports, for crying out loud, choice in education, which is a reason enough for black people to divorce themselves from the Democratic Party. And he's doing something about illegal immigration. George Borjas is a Harvard economist. He's probably done more work, Mayor, on the impact of illegal immigration and on the economy than maybe anybody else. And he says there are winners and losers because of the illegal immigration. The obvious winners are the illegals themselves, people who hire them at cheaper prices than they otherwise would pay. But the big loser, the identifiable loser, are unskilled Americans living in the inner cities. They've lost probably about 1 million jobs that they otherwise would be holding. And the presence of the illegals puts about $2,000 of downward pressure on the wages that they otherwise would be. So Trump is doing something about that. So if Trump is a racist, Mayor, he needs to go back to racism school because he's a pretty bad one.
I think, of course I knew him so well, and he's running for president. I was one of the people who felt, I know that many of these calumnies and attacks on him are so untrue, and it may be closer to him because I felt like it's unfair. And I knew personally, and I would tell my friends, trust me, he's going to be a good president. This man is an executive, and it's almost like a challenge to his ego, his talent. There's a problem. I can solve it. And even the ones he can't solve, he can make better by approaching it that way. And I said, you're going to see tremendous things happen, particularly with the black and Hispanic community. He'll remember that promise. He'll remember what he said to them when he made that kind of bet with them. You can't do worse. And as he started doing it, a lot of people, fair-minded people, have turned around about him. And they said, he really means it. Everybody's been saying that, and he really means it. Now, on the other hand, there's this book out by David Horowitz called Blitz. And in the very beginning of the book, and you know David, I know David, he's very, very, very deep thinker. And David puts together something I think we probably all believe for some time, but he puts it together like in a couple of sentences. It's really, really good. He says that the biggest scandal in the Democratic Party is not Hillary Clinton. It's not Joe Biden in China or Ukraine or where he's making millions. Biggest scandal in the Democratic Party is for 50 years. It's oppressed, taken advantage of, manipulated, and treated horribly the inner cities of America that happen to have large African-American populations. And he would include Hispanics in that, but more directed toward African Americans. And that they keep them in dependency in order to control their vote. And without that vote at that large number, they're finished because they have no policies for anyone else. Is that too much of a jump, too much of a conspiracy? Or is it pretty much the functioning truth? Because a lot of them seem to act that way. And the Biden statement about how if you don't vote for me, you're not black, kind of indicates he believes something like that.
Well, the bottom line is the effect of their policies, the effect of their anti-choice policies, the effect of the welfare state policies, the effect of high tax policies, the effect of stupid things like minimum wages and porous borders has been to undermine the black community. Now, whether they did this by design or whether they did it with the best of intentions, to me, is immaterial. I'm looking at the effect. And you look at Donald Trump, some other things I forgot to mention. He pardoned Jack Johnson. That may
Yes.
seem like a little thing, but Jack Johnson was the first black heavyweight champion, and he was prosecuted under what's called the Mann Act for taking a white woman across state lines for, quote, illicit purposes. It was BS, and there's been a 15-year effort pushed by Ken Burns and Sylvester Stallone to get him pardoned. Obama wouldn't do it. George W. Bush wouldn't do it. Trump did it. Trump also pardoned a woman named Alice Johnson, who got a very long sentence for a serious drug offense, but it was not violent. He commuted her sentence. He also signed what's called the Music Modernization Act, and a bunch of musicians, many of whom are black, are now going to get the royalties for the first time on online digital playing of their music. And you had the surviving member of Sam and Dave at the White House during the ceremony, very happy, saying it's going to help everybody, not just blacks, not just whites, but everybody. Trump got virtually no credit for that. So you add all that stuff up, as I said, he's got to be the world's worst racist.
You know, and actually his business analysis, his intelligence, his strategic ability actually located things that really hurt the black community. Not this systemic, underlying, unconscious racism, but actual things that hurt, that have to be reversed. Things that hurt their economy, things that hurt their ability to have a job. He took the 1994 crime bill, he didn't take it apart. A lot of that bill was very important to putting dangerous criminals in jail. But he saw the part that was very unfair, and he pulled it out. Biden, excuse the sarcasm, but Biden was too stupid to actually be able to do that. But Obama could have done that. Obama is smart as hell, and he could have done that. And he never, I always felt Obama didn't want to deliver too much to the black community, so he didn't get seen as only a black president or something like that. I don't know why he had this historic opportunity and he didn't take advantage of it, and he was smart enough to do it.
Well, he's also a left-wing guy who believes in taxing and spending and regulating. So no matter we take out the race part of it, he still would have pushed policies that are stupid. The stimulus policy didn't work. Remember cars for clunkers? They don't brag about that. There were cash for caulkers. They don't brag about it. Think about it. Obama says that President Trump inherited a recovering economy, but he never says what he did. Did the stimulus package work? No. Later on, he said there was no such thing as shovel-ready jobs. Remember that? Did cars for clunkers work? No. Did cash for caulkers work? No. They never even mentioned these programs, which were rolled out with great fanfare, cost taxpayers billions of dollars. They don't even talk about it. That's the kind of thing that Mao Zedong would have done with his 5-year plan. I mean, honestly, So Obama is still a man of the left. He could have done something about this nonsense about institutional racism, but he still would have been a man of the left. So I still would have said that he would have been a bad president no matter what. But he really made things worse when he undermined the notion that America felt. When he walked into the office, Mayor, he was at 67%. Now think about that. He won 52%. He walks in with a 15% add-on to that. Trump didn't do that. That's because so many people who didn't vote for Obama said, okay, I didn't vote for the guy. He's a Democrat, but at least he won't be a no justice, no peace, throw a brick through the window, the white man doesn't.
I believe that. I've worked very, very hard for Romney, and was very disappointed when he was elected because I was afraid. I read a lot more about him, and I was afraid that he wasn't the guy of, the speech at the convention where we're one people, and which I love. First time I heard it, I became a fan. Then I started hearing other things, and I said, well, but then I also said, and I told my friends, don't prejudge him. When a man becomes president, sometimes he gets a chance to have the best. Now he can do what he wants. The best instincts. The guy's got good instincts. Boy, did he disappoint me. Wow. Ooh. But in any event, this is the election we have coming. So what do you see Kamala Harris adding to Biden where there is nothing? There is no Biden. He doesn't seem to be able to campaign in a way that he can put two sentences together. She's going to have to carry it. What will that mean?
Well, that's what she adds. She can put two sentences together.
She's smart. Smart.
Old.
No
he's
question.
old. She's young. He's dull and doddering. She's energetic. And assertive and pointed and articulate. He's a man, she's a woman, he's white, she's a person of color. she brings a great deal to the table for him. And I know that she's been disparaged by conservative commentators for this, that, and the other. But we're not the ones that are going to be voting for them. They're looking at the independents. And I think she brings a great deal to the table for Joe Biden for that. But ultimately, I would, in a normal year, I would say it really doesn't matter who the vice president is. But I believe that Mike Pence really brought a lot to the table for President Trump. People thought he was volatile and emotional, and Pence was calm and soothing. And I think you take away Pence, President Trump doesn't win. That is not normally the case when it comes to a VP pick. And right here with Biden, I don't think Biden has the ability to finish his first term. I think a large number of Democrats, when I saw a poll, feel that he won't finish his first term. So Kamala Harris is very likely going to be the next president of the United States if that side wins. So she should be looked at as that. And she had the most left-wing record in the Senate. She's not anybody's moderate by any means. And as you pointed out, she's not particularly likable. She didn't do well in the primaries. But she is the person that I think we ought to be looking at as the next person, next president of the United States, because Joe Biden, if he makes it, I don't believe he's got it. My goodness, he can't remember where he is. He's losing his memory. I'm taking no pleasure in this. I'm not a doctor, but I'm just looking at this as a layperson, and this guy is losing it.
You know, Larry, I went through an incident back a year ago about discovering his corruption in my course of representing the president. And the evidence was given to me, I didn't go looking for it, by Ukrainians. And when I first saw the tape recording of his admitting a bribe, I didn't believe it, because I'd known him for 30 years, and I told you, I knew him as a stupid, nice guy. Never thought of him as a crook. But I won't burden you with this, but there is tremendous evidence that his family has made anywhere from $30 to $50 million selling his office.
Right.
And his answer is, I don't know my family's business. That's a line out of The Godfather. I don't know my family's business. It'd be impossible for him not to know Brother James and Little Hunter, who had a drug problem, is becoming millionaires. But in any event, the press gives him a cover-up that's bigger than Hillary Clinton. It's like they're so afraid that the facts about him will come out, even going back to the plagiarism. Mm-hmm. Plagiarism wasn't just in law school. He did it as a senator.
Right.
He's a cheat.
Yeah, he stole speeches.
A guy who does plagiarism in law school, unless he has some major conversion, is a guy who's going to take bribes when he gets older. I mean, but the shame of it is you can't attack him. They all line up. You become unfair. But I think she's going to have to carry a lot of this campaign, and I think it's going to be part of our job as Republicans to point out in as nice a way as we can who she is.
Absolutely. The New York Times is already covering for her. They refer to her as a, quote, pragmatic moderate, end of quote. What? Her voting record in 2019 was more left-wing than Bernie Sanders, for crying out loud. A pragmatic moderate, but that's what they're going to push, that she's a moderate, and that therefore these independents who are a little nervous about the alleged pull that the left has on Joe Biden, they need not worry because they've got this anchor who's a moderate. That's going to be the narrative that they push.
And she's a co-author of the Green New Deal with AOC and
Right.
the squad. She wants us to be free of oil and gas in 10 years, in which case we can't fly. I mean, it's
about reparations. She says something like, well, we need to have programs that will benefit Black people disproportionately, which will sort of be a form of reparations. So essentially, she accepts the premise that white people who were never slave owners deserve to give money to Black people who were never slaves. She still accepts that the whole premise behind that, which is,
there's also the idea that they're trying to make distinctions now. Like she's for Medicare for all. Get rid of your plan. Get rid of your doctor. 180 million people would have to get rid of their plans that they like. Biden is Medicare for people who want it. But number one, who's going to win that battle? Who has the intelligence, the strength, the support of the rest of the party to maybe push him there? And if she doesn't push him there, she's the next president. She'll do it then.
Sure.
So we're looking at socialized medicine one way or the other. Either it's coming in on day 10 or it's coming in on day 50. But we're getting socialized medicine. That is not a moderate.
Absolutely. They've wanted that from day one. Harry Reid said in a newspaper interview that the whole goal was single payer. We just can't do it in one fell swoop. Howard Dean, when he was chair of the DNC, said the same thing. They got Obama on tape before he became a senator saying that if he were starting from scratch, it would be single payer. So this is what these guys have always wanted. They just knew they couldn't do it in one fell swoop. Donald Trump stopped that march, but it will resume once Joe Biden and Kamala Harris become president and vice president, if we are unlucky enough for that to happen.
So how do you see, let's conclude with, how do you see it? One, what's your best advice to the president? And number two, how do you see this working out?
My best advice to the president is to stay busy. I think his numbers went down when he stopped having the daily briefings. Once President Trump goes before the camera, you don't have Jake Tapper, you don't have Van Jones, you don't have Craig Melvin, you don't have Andrea Mitchell and all these other haters filtering out what he said. You have to cover him. And so I would urge him to go out more and just be public. The economy is going to turn around. I think it already is turning around.
It is.
And I think we're getting a handle on the coronavirus. I think people are understanding social distancing, understanding the importance of masks, or avoiding large crowds. So I think come election time, we're going to have a very different story about both the economy and the coronavirus. It seems to me that some of these treatments might very well come online before the end of the year. We may even have a vaccine that's workable before the end of the year. Those things are game changers, provided they happen before the election. The other, of course, wild card will be the debate. I don't believe Joe Biden is going to be able to hold up very well during these debates against a vigorous, aggressive, assertive President Trump with a wonderful record to run on. So those are all the things that are going to happen between now and then. And keep in mind, despite the drubbing that President Trump gets every single day from ABC, NBC, CBS, MSNBC, Yahoo News, Google News, last Harris Hill poll, Biden is only 4 points ahead. My goodness, but that's before the Kamala Harris pick. We don't know how that's going to cut. But just 4 points ahead, which means he is doing better than Obama did at this juncture when Obama was running for re-election.
He was 6 points behind on the exit poll on election day, even in the key states.
Right.
And I showed up there about 2 o'clock right after the exit polls, because I was the eternal optimist in the campaign. I said, get out the champagne. Right. These numbers that have to be at 10 or more to impress me. Right. And it turned out to be true. Same thing. The same thing happened with Bush's second victory. They had decided Kerry had won. Right. 8 o'clock at night, they almost announced him president.
Right.
The polls, I know it's easy to say, there are some good polls, but you have to know them. But Larry, let me say one more thing about your book, about your documentary, which could be a book too. And it's really something everybody has to see, not just for this election. I think it goes a long way to explain, certainly to white people, what's going on. It goes a long way to explain to them that there are an awful lot of good people, just like them, in the black community. And I went through this with the mafia, where when I went after the mafia, I was accused of being anti-Italian. I even got a lower Italian vote when I ran the first time than I did an Irish, Jewish, other white middle-class vote, because they were angry at me. But over time, they've come to realize that it was the best thing. It was the best thing for Italian Americans to stand up to the mafia than having other people have to do it, because ultimately it becomes more credible to the people in the community. You're a very brave man for doing this. You're doing a great thing for the country. You're helping us solve maybe our longest problem that we're very responsible for, until recently, where I think we've generally tried to do everything we can to overcome it. I can't think of a thing that has been suggested in the last 30 or 40 years to cure racism that has any common sense that America hasn't tried to do.
Right.
And your perspective on it is unique. So you keep pushing that. You keep pushing that documentary, and then what you do every day, remarkable. That's why you're number one.
Well, Mayor, thank you for that. By the way, you can see the film on UncleTom.com. There's a segment in the film where Candace Owens says, look, I'm not here to be popular. I'm like an alarm clock. It goes off, and maybe you're ticked off in the morning when you get up, but then you go and do what you have to do. And that's what I think we're doing in this film. It's a pep talk for America. And I heard a liberal say, I really thought two things. I thought the movie was going to be about you, and I said, well, that would have been boring. The second thing is I thought it was going to be a bunch of black conservatives telling people what to think. Instead, you're telling people they are free to think in America, and they ought to be able to do so without being marginalized and demeaned as Uncle Tom's.
God bless you.
God bless.
Great work for our country.
Thank you so much, Mayor.
Well, that was the well-known, the number one commentator, the soon-to-be number one documentary maker. I'm sure it's going to just do tremendously well because it is so infused with honesty. And boy, Larry couldn't have put it out at a better time. America is very confused about race. I don't think America, by and large, has bad feelings about race at all. I think they have bad feelings about what they're told about race.
Right.
And Larry makes that distinction, and it's dramatic. And for this, I think Larry deserves a great deal of credit. And I hope we can have him back several times before the election, because I think he has a unique perspective on this election. So I want to thank Larry. I want to thank you for watching, and we'll be back very shortly. Thank you.